Well, everybody, what do you know? Movie night is alive and well. I just checked, it's only been about a month since we were joined by Elite RE doing The Crucible. And now here we are, in our newly revamped, easy for me to say, fashion, where we're doing 3 movies in one. Yes, I watched 3 movies. You can see their beautiful little posters on the artistic recreation. It's not really a recreation of this artistic abomination I made on stream here about 5 minutes before we went live. Now, I think the Lady Vengeance and Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance posters are from the same, series of posters. And the Oldboy one might be, but it doesn't have the thing around, you see how this one's yellow and it's got a little yellow thing around it, and this one's pink and it's got a little pink thing. Well, I guess it's more red, that's thematically entitled to the movie, didn't you know, chat? But then we just got Oldboy. It is from the same, because it's got the same little markings over the top of it. What, you think Oldboy's so fucking good it doesn't get the fucking thingy around it, and it gets to be in the center? We made it the smallest one. See if that's symbolic of what we think of the movies. Though you would already know what I think of these movies. Easy for me to say. At least from a rating standpoint, if you were following me on Letterboxd, and you would have got an update or a little activity thing about me rating this, and me rating this, that. And then you'd know if this recreation here, which is already, as we've said, not a recreation, is indicative of the overall ratings. But we'll settle on that for a little bit. We ain't entirely revealing everything we think just right now in the intro. Anything else we got to go over? Oh, we've got to finalize what we're doing next time. Israel Park Wen. What's his fucking name again? Hold on, let me scroll over here. I got these letterboxes. Park Chan-wook. Now, it's a bloke you've heard of a million times, just like you've heard of Oldboy a million times when we've tacked on these other 2 movies. Now, a few months ago, maybe like a month ago, I went through and I wrote down, because organizing shit is funner than actually consuming shit, as we all know, and making lists, etc., etc. I came up with the grand idea that after 10 episodes of Movie Night, we would change formats so we could cover things sort of in groups. And I was grouping things together, and I was writing down, and most of them are grouped within authors or within franchises. So, we can do these fucking shitty Star Wars prequels if we ever want to. We don't. We're never doing them. Don't get excited, chat. Fuck Elite RE, fuck Miller. We hate Star Wars. And one of them was the Park Chan-wook movies. And I just did Oldboy and Lady Vengeance. Now, I chose Oldboy because it's the big famous one, and then Lady Vengeance because it had a girl on the cover, and I thought it looked cool, and that's a cool name. Only for me to later find out. I think in the last movie night we might have just said we were doing those 2. But since then I found out that there was a spiritual trilogy with a movie that came before both of them called Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. And this movie didn't look as cool. And then I read the synopsis for it. It was about a deaf guy, and I'm like, that's sad. I don't want to watch this movie. So I procrastinated for 2 months. Or a month. How long did we say it was? A month. It's I don't want to watch this. I do want to watch Oldboy, and I do want to watch Lady Vengeance, but this fucking Sympathy one, I don't want to watch this shit. So I just procrastinated until maybe a week and a half ago when I watched the first one. I was like, this is fucking sick, bro. Spoiler alert. And I watched Oldboy, and then I watched Lady Vengeance. I wanted to give them, because I was nearly going to watch Lady Vengeance the day after I watched Oldboy, because I was like, man, these are fun. I like watching movies and stuff. But then I was like, no, I need to let Oldboy gestate a little longer. And then we'll talk about Lady Vengeance. And just 2 days ago, I think I watched Lady Vengeance. And I'm like, oh, we could record the fucking movie night now. But I'm like, no, it's got to gestate. We got to think about these things. And so here we are. But this is the connection for these 3 movies, the 3 movies that we are covering here. We'll see if we like this format more. I also considered recording after each individual movie. We'll see if that was, because I've decided that was not a good format, and that I would like to talk about them in totality, though you could always do that after you record the 3rd one, when you have all the context. But I think I'm going to separate this into sort of general thoughts about the whole things, as in the 3 movies together, and then individually maybe, though I don't have any notes. I sat down to write notes for this, and nothing came to mind, which is interesting. So we're freeballing basically here. Don't know if that phrase, that saying, can be implied to this situation. Freeballing. I guess we're hanging off the ledge. That one doesn't even apply either. We're going off the cuff. Now that's one that fits. Now, oh yes, what we were doing is we're deciding. So I'm basically torn between 2, but I think I already know. And I think what we're going to do next time is After Sun and Tar, which are 2 big movies from 2022, and that's all that connects them. They're both vaguely about women, I think. Tar is not directed by a woman. After Sun is. These are two very big reputational movies from last year. And I really wanted to watch After Sun for a while. And Tar is a more recent one. I saw ContraPoints getting into a big controversy about not liking it. I remember, I think it slipped under my radar until I watched that Cineflix top 10 list for last year, and I think it was either 2 or 3 on the list overall. And talking about how the first 20 minutes is like one big intro sequence or something. I was like, that's pretty fucking cool, bro. It's funny because After Sun is like really short. It's like only 100 minutes, but Tar is like, I think 152 minutes, which is funny. Differences. Who knows which one I'll watch first? Now, what's holding me back from that is that I sort of want to make it diverse. So we're doing Korean movies here. Now, the other group of movies I want to do are Chinese movies. Now, what's this fucking love Chinese movie that everybody's heard of that's slipping my mind because I'm under the deep, dark pressures of recording right now? Oh, I can't even look it up if I don't know its fucking name. It's something you can smell love? What the fuck is this fucking... Why don't I just go into the watch list? Chat, why didn't you tell me to do that sooner? Oh my god, I've got all these Korean movies added because I went through people's fucking thingies, their letterboxes here. Scrolling, vamping. Oh, In the Mood for Love, of course. This one, you know this one, chat. And this bloke's got another one. All of his movies seem to be about romance stuff. I think the Chungking Express, because it comes out as similar, like it's 1994 and then 2000, the two most popular ones. They both got very high ratings on Letterboxd. But these idiots gave Blonde like a 2. What the fuck do they know about movies? But In the Mood for Love has a 4.4, and look at this fucking cover art. She's in the blue dress and he's smoking, and they both look so stoic and, sexy and stuff. So we gotta watch that. And this other one is about another love thing. And I don't think I've ever seen a Chinese movie. Now, I didn't want to do 2 Asian foreign film things back to back. I think that's, I don't know, for whatever reason, my OCD rind. They can't go back to back, and we've got to delve into the world of white people. Disgusting, I know. But one of them's like a woman and stuff, so that's diverse, and I like that. So I think the one after that will be In the Mood for Love and the Chungking Express, though it's not it's just Chungking Express. Cool. Because I kind of really want to look at this fucking poster for In the Mood for Love. You just want to watch it. But no, I think we'll do After Sun and Tar and then those. So that's the future. Look into the future. If you're keeping up with the movie night, you got to be watching those. So I think we're getting into general thoughts here. Those are all the introductory things. If you're also following me on Twitter, I do little things as I add them all to my media checklist. And they've all been 3 in a row because I've been consuming a lot recently, and it's directly hurt everything else about my life. And by consuming a lot, I mean I spend like 1 or 2 hours, maybe max a day consuming things, and it just ruins my life. But number 10 on my media checklist, yes, I've only seen 10 things or completed 10 things in the year of 2023. I thought we were going to do better, but I lied. Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, 2002, and I just wrote, what a cute movie! ! And then for Oldboy 2003, I said, was I supposed to be grossed out by any of the incest? Because I wasn't. ... Plus, he's so hot, and it's a little picture of the bad guy. He's cute. He was also in the third one here, Lady Vengeance 2005. I recognized Australia immediately, for I'm Australian. True. He's obviously the older version of the kidnapped dead kid in this movie. And I saw that he was in it on Letterboxd, and I was like super excited, but then I hovered over the thing, and I think this is while I was watching the movie, because these fucking movies, you can't see on Australian internet, you can't just watch a movie, right? It's got a buffer every once in a while. And sometimes you just got to let it pause for like a minute, and you go piss, and you come back, oh, fantastic. But then you just pissed 15 minutes ago, and it's buffering again. So you got to tab over to Letterboxd and start scrolling through the fucking... you got to click on the names, right click them, see what else the director did, see what else the actors did. And I accidentally scrolled over, and this was while I was watching Lady Vengeance. I scroll over one of the names, and it's the dude from Oldboy, the bad guy, and it said older, and then the dead kid's name. And I was like, oh, spoiler alert, he's going to show up at some point. And then I was anticipating him through the whole movie, and he was in like literally 30 seconds of the movie. So I was pissed, is what I'm trying to say. But yes, buffering was a factor in all of these. On the third, in Lady Vengeance, I watched on Plex through Mr. R server, which was very nice. The other two I didn't. I just watched them on 123 Movies. Spoiler alert, I didn't give that link out. Censor that. Or whatever their fucking modern iteration is called. I hate supporting authors. We hate authors here. Manga authors specifically. Did you know that Oldboy was a manga? Miller sent me a James Gunn video where he was talking about his top 5 comic book movies, and Oldboy was number 4 because it was a manga once upon a time, just like that Edge of Tomorrow movie. Crazy. Apparently it's like 8 volumes. I scrolled through like it was either the first chapter or volume. It actually might have been the first volume. Though they might just call the chapters volumes because things do that sometimes, or they might be managed on Letterboxd to have each volume instead of each chapter, because I know that's the case with Devilman. These fucking sites, these fucking words. Who needs them? It would make sense if it was just 8 chapters. 8 volumes seems like a lot for Oldboy. It seemed like the plot and the setup were mildly the same, but I think all the Oedipus... Is it Oedipus or Oedipus? The dude that the Doors sing about in the middle of that In the End song. Connect it to another movie night thing. Remember Apocalypse Now? Crazy. But yeah, that Greek thingy with the incest and the fucking the mother and the killing the father, etc., etc., and not knowing about it. That thing, that seems to not have been in the manga, which was interesting. But anyway, we'll talk about that will we talk about that in more detail? We'll talk about Oldboy in more detail in a second. So, if we go to overall ratings, let's just do overall ratings for all of them. I still think this, is I gave Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance 4.5, and then I gave the other two 4. I think I like the more down-to-earth or the slower aspects of Mr. Vengeance more, I think. I think it's definitely the most I felt for the characters in all of these movies compared to the other two. Now, I will say, I think thinking about these movies is more enjoyable than actually watching the movies. Though they're still mildly enjoyable to watch. We were having a fun time while watching them. But because of that, I think rewatches are in order, and longer times thinking about things are in order. I will say for the last two, the plot moves very... I don't even know if I want to say quickly. Now, actually, they do descend, or ascend, in length. Descend in length. Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance is the longest one, then Oldboy, then Lady Vengeance. So that could be why the plot feels quicker, though in Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, there's not so much of a plot, and it's more like a half and half story, because for the first time we're with... Now, the problem is, I'm not going to remember character names for anybody, and I especially can't say them, and I will say this, because this is my notes. I think I do like the Korean language a lot, I want to say visually, but I mean audio. Audio visually? I like the way it sounds is what I'm saying. We got these languages in the world chat, and some of them sound terrible and some of them sound great. English is the default, so I can't really have an opinion on it. Arabic sounds the coolest, I think. And like Chinese sounds the worst. These are almost inarguable. Japanese sounds terrible a lot of the time, and then sometimes it sounds cool. Japanese is like a middle of the road one. Then you got these languages like French and German. They're in the same category here, where they both sound really cool for like 3 words in a sentence. Then there's like 2 words where they sound terrible, and then it sort of wins you back in the end. If you watch A Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and it's like, oh, French, such a sexy language, my goodness. And there'll just be one, and I can't even recreate like a word that would be indicative of this. But there's just like one... It might even just be one syllable or in something, and there's just a word. And it like ruins how good it sounds, like the structure of the sentence and how good it's... I swear, somebody else has got to feel the same with this. And German is the same, but it's very different. With French, it sounds very feminine for a second, and that's bad. And in French, I think it sounds... And in German, rather, I think it sounds very masculine for a second, and then that sounds bad. What a centrist I'm being. You got to be middle of the road is my prescription here, I think. somebody else has to relate. So German and French are sort of in the Japanese category of sometimes good, sometimes bad. I never heard a bad sentence in Arabic. Everything sounds super cool. Um, is this just because I was exposed to a lot of Arabic when I was younger? But I guess I was exposed to Chinese. I grew up in a very diverse place, Chad. I'm very educated, and I was trying to say non-racist, but there's another word for that that would sound funnier in that sarcastic tone. And it's not ally. I'm very culturally entwined. I don't know what I was trying to say. But we got these languages, and some of them sound bad, some of them sound good. Indian's another one that's probably in the middle there, though it's peaking a little down to the Chinese. Maybe when we watch the Chinese movies in 2 movie nights, my opinion on this will change greatly. Oh, Italian is another one that's at the very top with Arabic. What other languages we got in the world, huh? I'm trying to think. I can't think of any other languages. Spanish, I guess, sounds pretty cool. But that's it. Those are all the languages in the world, I guess. Korean sounds good, I think. I think it's in the good category. Though it did have some bits of the critiques of the Italian and German languages, but it was much less. It was like every few sentences there was one syllable that sounded bad. I think this is all coming off of the fact that the Australia point in Lady Vengeance, because there is one shot where we cut to Australia, and I wonder if there's no way they flew to Australia for like 1 or 2 scenes. But you could just tell by the environment. I'm like, do they have environments like this in Korea? And then I looked at the tree and I'm like, are we in Australia? And I was like, we are with the daughter. And she probably did get adopted. And there are a lot of like adopted immigrants in Australia. So I was like, holy fuck, are we in Australia? And then she said something and she had the thickest Australian accent. It's a lot of Asian girls with Australian accents all have very deep voices, kind of. And it's cool and I like it. And she immediately had it, and I immediately recognized it. Then we cut to, like, the inside of the house, and I'm like, yep, this is an Australian, like, old person's house. And they're sort of an older couple. It was just a moment of validation of me slightly figuring it out right beforehand. We'll talk about figuring things out slightly beforehand when we get to Oldboy in a second. And in a second, I don't know, we could be 20 minutes. So if we go to my notes here, my notes is general is that I have like 3 notes here. It says general, it's not that disturbing, and I thought I was a wimp. This is kind of true. I don't know if any of these movies, and I don't think any of them would be cast as horror movies, but I always have this thing where I'm like, have I actually ever seen a horror movie before? I watched Super 8, and I know some people call that a horror movie, but that shit's just a fucking teen comedy romp. Super 8, we should rewatch that one time, because I watched that movie like 3 times when I was a kid and thought it was really cool. But I don't remember much about it. And I think it was just because there was a boy and a girl, and they were teenagers, and I was a bit younger than that, and they kissed and stuff. And I was like, man, I love romance stuff, even when I was 8 years old. Horror. That's why we brought that up. Because I've never seen like a slasher film or a jump scare in a movie that was supposed to be scary or anything like that. And generally horror movies, and everybody says this before they start watching horror movies, I'm almost certain, just like everybody says they don't like the One Piece character design before they start reading One Piece, or they don't like Mecha before they watch Evangelion, etc., etc. It's just one of these dumb things that people say before they get normalized to it. Is that I don't really have any draw to watch horror movies. Now, there are some horror movies on the watch list, like The Exorcist, etc., etc. And obviously, I want to do it just to say that I've done it and see what the experience is like. But there is no natural draw to me of, like, scary horror movies. I don't really like scary stuff. But now I'm wondering if I've missed my opportunity. And not watching horror movies when I was a kid is like, am I going to be scared or disturbed by that much stuff? Because you always have the easiest out when it's a movie. And you just be like, well, it's dumb fake shit. Like, this doesn't matter. This isn't actually scary. It's just fake. You get scared for a second, you're like, this is a fucking idiot walking in a set. Probably a CGI monster over there. And you just have an automatic out. We'll see. One day we'll watch a horror movie. But I felt that way with all the disturbing stuff. And incest doesn't disturb me at all. So that fell flat. But we'll talk about that when we get into Oldboy. Have I said that a few times yet? So that's my only general note. I thought I was a wimp. I thought I was scared of these horror movies and disturbing things, and I didn't watch stuff like that because I was a scaredy cat. And then I watched it and went, shit, whatever, mid lamel. There were some disturbing things. The most disturbing things we'll probably talk about when we get there. I think Lady Vengeance and the tapes is probably the most disturbing thing. What else could be as disturbing? Fucking your own daughter, I guess, for a lot of people is big disturbing nonsense. You sort of have to look away when he's eating the octopus. That was a little weird. But I don't know. We'll brainstorm this as we talk about the movies in more details. And my only other two notes are Bae Donna is the prettiest girl of all time, for Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, and then the dude that I already talked about being cute is the prettiest boy of all time, which is this Asian bad guy in Oldboy. My goodness. You see him showering a bunch of times. Actually, that was when he was cute. But he's just cute, you know? But this girl in Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, my goodness. And then she has a naked sex scene. My goodness. Payoff and what? No, what do we say? Build up and payoff? My goodness. Because those are all my notes, I guess we're going to start to talk about Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. I guess throughout them all, it's very evident that Mr. Park Chan-wook here has a lot of stylized shit in his movies. This is the most hack-forward thing that I've ever said in my life, right? And I'm acknowledging this to soften the blow, so you will not make fun of me. But it did remind me of Quentin Tarantino, I guess. Now, there were certain things where I'm like, oh, this came out before Kill Bill, and that shit's in Kill Bill, but I can't remember what it was. Oh, I guess it was like the raping of the unconscious surgery people in Mr. Vengeance. I guess that reminded me of it, and there was some other aspects, I'm pretty sure. Nonetheless, what we were beginning to talk about Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. Oh, we were talking about stylization, but there are a bunch of cool, like, little shots. Like, for whatever reason, I guess we are talking about everything right now. Like, the shot of the dude in Lady Vengeance of the couple, the male in the couple, and how he's got the tattoo of the dude firing a gun as he's holding the gun. Like, that's a clever shot. There's a million clever shots. I think Lady Vengeance had the most stuff where I thought it was really clever. Like, there's a shot at the beginning of the movie where our main girl is getting off the bus, assumingly from prison, to get out. And I think the movie opens on the church dude and his, like, Santa troupe, and they're singing songs or whatever. And then we see her, and we sort of get this wide shot of them. So we cut from a close-up of them singing to a wide shot of them singing that we're on for like 30 seconds. And it's like everybody getting off and going to meet their families. And our main character gets off. And you don't realize that she's our main character yet because she's from a wild shot. And there's a moment, and because it's a long shot and there's a lot happening, like there's people walking in a direction. And then we got the Santa people we were just with. So it was like... And then I noticed her, and she gets out, and she's sort of in this white... It doesn't... The dress thing doesn't, though it is kind of plot important, doesn't stand out too much. When she gets out, and I noticed her, and then I looked back at the Santa people, and then I kept looking back at her, and I was like, this is going to be really clever if she's, like, the person we're supposed to be focusing on in this shot. And then I went through the whole mind thing of, like, I shouldn't say that because it's not going to be that, and I'm just going to be disappointed, and I don't want to be disappointed in the movie because I'm trying to engage with this in good faith. And then it turned out she was the main character, and we were supposed to be keeping our eye on it, and I was like, oh, what a clever shot, and how it was blocked and how it directed our eye. And then she comes up and we get the close-up of her and telling the dude to go fuck himself, the church dude, and her change of attitude. That was one of the cleverest, like, my little interaction with that was one of the cleverest, maybe the cleverest thing in all three of these movies. I was like, wow, what a shot. It made me think the movie was doing a great thing, and then I had to self-doubt because I'm like, I shouldn't put the expectations on this movie to be that high. And then it delivered, and it's like that roller coaster of heightened expectation, completely lowering expectation, and then heightening the expectations again. It was fucking sick. There was another twist in Lady Vengeance. Oh, it's like at the midpoint where you think, oh, this is how we set up our third act, is the daughter gets kidnapped again and she's got to go save her from the bad guy and his little minions. But then there's a shift in the scene, and it does the thing where the music spoils it beforehand, but you don't believe it. Pokemon does that all the time. That's just like a trope and thing where it looks like the hero's down and out, and then the music starts playing, and like 3 seconds before we see the hero actually like come back. Spoilers are good. That's that's what we've learned here. And she shoots the one dude, and then the great shot of her like walking very quickly and then shooting the dude's hand off to save her daughter. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, they're not going to get kidnapped, but the friend's still kidnapped. The other former inmate who's been posing as the bad guy's wife or girlfriend for like 2 years or something. Or maybe longer than that. I don't know why I thought it was 2 years, because I don't remember an exact point in the movie where they stress that. And then we cut back to her, and he actually is the one that was passed out, even though she's already tied up. And it's like, oh, they got him instead. And it's like, oh, I was so certain the third act of this movie was going to be her storming his house or something to save a friend or save her kidnapped daughter, and that's how we were going to get it. And then the movie goes in a completely different direction for the last like 40 minutes, where it's like the torture scene, et cetera, with the families. Those are the two cleverest moments, and probably my two favorite moments from these movies. So then, as I ask myself this question, why is Lady Vengeance only 4 stars? And Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance 4.5, and Oldboy 4. I don't know, bro. It's just like, is it better? I'm still processing. Obviously, Lady Vengeance was the one I saw most recently. So it could always change. All these could change. Let's backtrack to Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance real quick. I really love the mundanity. Is that a word? The mundaneness? Is that a word? Of the movie. And we were talking about the slower parts. It feels much more grounded and less grandiose than the other two. Now, as I've learnt in doing mild bits of research, and by mild bits, I think I watched like one YouTube video. It's about that British reviewer dude called Mark, and then his last name starts with a K. I remember there was like one night when I was like 15 when I watched a million of his videos as I was playing some shitty video game. And now I sometimes go back and watch a movie review he's done, if it's about something I've seen or something I'm interested in, etc. You know that fella. Hold on, chat. Yawn break. So what were we saying? Oh, and he did a little, like, 2-minute review thing of Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance on an anniversary or some shit. And he gave a little backstory on Park Chan-wook's, like, history and how apparently, like, before this, in 2000, he made, like, the highest-grossing Korean film of all time. And he was saying that in the video. And I don't think he said at the time. So it might still be the highest-grossing one, which was one I had never heard of, which is interesting, especially when you factor in, like, what the Koreans value and sort of reputationally how Park Chan-wook would be known in Korea versus globally, where it's all old boy. That was very interesting. And apparently that 2000s movie, it came out in 2000, is like about a North Korea, South Korea, big political thing, moment in history or something. And he had like one movie before that, and then one movie before that he's tried to destroy or something that's apparently really bad. So I was learning about his history, etc. Now, why am I bringing this up? Oh, and it seems like there's a big shift after Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, because apparently after he made that big not global, but the highest grossing movie of all time in Korea fucking thing, I could look up the name of the movie. It came out in 2000. Go on the Letterboxd and look up his fucking Letterboxd page. It'll be the 2001. You fucking idiots. That I have now since added to the watch list, because at some point we're going to come back to Park Chan-wook because he makes some good movies. It seems more reserved, and it seems like his style, like Oldboy is of a style, and Lady Vengeance is of a similar style, where it feels Tarantino-y. I don't know how else to explain it. But it feels Kill Billy, I think. Yeah, Kill Billy is probably Kill Billy. Kill Bill is probably the most out there Tarantino movies, right? And then Death Proof is very similar. Though it did have the sort of the Pulp Fiction thing in Oldboy, where he's got the hammer and then there's the little dot line to the head of like, oh, this is doing it. It's like when, for whatever reason, there's video essay editing in Pulp Fiction. It's funny how I describe it as that, huh? Some people just killed themselves. Where Uma Thurman's doing like the box or something, and you know the fucking shit I'm talking about. But yeah, those two they feel like, and I've always thought this about Quentin Tarantino movies, they feel like performances almost, or like they indulge in what it means to be a movie, where it's sort of a heightened drama. There's a goofiness or a camp or a pulp to them. Oldboy is more so that, but Lady Vengeance is sort of like that. Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance might be Park Chan-wook's fucking Jackie Brown, if you know what I'm saying. It's the more grounded one. That's where the comparisons sort of end. And I don't know how to explain it more so than that. I think if you watch the movies, it'll be obvious. And I think that has more of a likelihood to connect with me, maybe. Because when I think of my favorite Tarantino movies, though Inglourious Basterds is pretty out there, and that's like my third favorite, or maybe even my second favorite one, but Jackie Brown is my favorite one, and it is the most normalized Tarantino movie. But yeah, the stylization is still there. It's just very different. There's definitely an over-dramatization even in Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. That's sort of at the core charm of the movies. But anyway, I think that's the conclusion, the unremarkable conclusion of that point. There's a better word than performance for these types of movies where they are... It's not cinema for cinemaphiles. It's not self-aware. It's not subversive. It's not performance either. There's a word. There's a description for them. Showy, I guess, which is similar to performancey. It's like, oh, come to the show, and it's going to be a show and very dramatic and exciting and etc., etc. I don't know. Moving on from this point. Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance is split sort of into two halves, which I think we've already said at some point. Where at the first, it's following... And it's funny how these films are not connected in any canonical sense. They all exist in very different feeling worlds. And even though I was just comparing Lady Vengeance and Oldboy a lot, Oldboy feels like a very sort of surreal world. Which sort of makes sense from, like, a lot of these concepts feel like they could be anime concepts, like the holding cells for 15 years and the hypnotism and even the bad guy's lair, etc., etc. It's like, oh, this feels like some anime stuff a bit, and that makes sense in retrospect. Just feels a little wacky, and the other two are less wacky, but the plot structure and sort of there is a lot of wackiness to Lady Vengeance. There's not wackiness in a bad sense either. But why were we saying that? I'm forgetting. Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance is what we're talking about. Split into two halves. I was talking about the connected lists. I was going to talk about that because then we started talking about they're not canonically connected. But there seems to be references. And there are some references. And they're all in Lady Vengeance, I think. Lady Vengeance re-brings up the line. Now, maybe this is a favorite line from, like, a famous kidnapper in pop culture or something, and I'm just missing the point here, which actually is the case in a lot of the stuff in this movie, where there seems to be a lot of cultural things that might seem weird, but the characters don't seem to think it's weird, which could also be the contextual point of the movie, because the movie is wacky. These movies are wacky in that sense, where the characters might not be entirely socially aware in a situation, but it could also just be a cultural context thing that I think is weird as an outsider, etc., etc. The point is the references. At some point, Lady Vengeance says that to the bad guy in that movie, Mr. Peak, or Beak, I think it starts with a B. Beak, that's the bad guy, who we torture at the end, Lamau. He... in selling to her to help with the kidnappings, like, there are good kidnappings and bad kidnappings. A good kidnapping is when the baby gets returned or whatever, and and you just take money and they didn't need the money anyway or whatever, which is exactly the conversation that's had in Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance between the boyfriend and girlfriend. And I was like, oh, that's sick. I love the references. There was another one that was an Oldboy reference, but I've forgotten it. that I can't remember. And even the one dude being the older version of the kid feels like a reference of like, oh, if you, it's sort of like another Tarantino comparison. It's like when Samuel L. Jackson or somebody shows up for even a very small role in a Tarantino film, and you're like, oh, it's the guy in the guy's movie where they're together all the time. Like even like Samuel L. Jackson doing the voiceovers. Or is it Kurt Russell, or do they both? I think they both do voiceovers in Glorious Bastards. And it's like, oh, of course he's in it. We love that. Or Kurt Russell just being like in that very small part in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You know what I'm talking about. You get the sort of, it's almost author canon, or like authorial canon, or what do you call it when you call him an auteur or some shit? Or it's like a visionary author who comes up with all the best stuff. Seems like a cringe word, but whatever. People definitely call Park Chan-wook an auteur. Yeah, there were references throughout, is what I'm saying. They're a little bit connected in that sense. So, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, two sides. First, we follow the deaf kid. He's trying to get his daughter. His sister is sick. He loves his sister. We get that monologue at the beginning with the at the little pool river thingy. What do you call that? A lake, a stream, wherever they used to play as a kid. That's like a central focus location for the movie. And he's like, and his boss is gonna fire him, and he had it saved up enough money for the operation, but then the doctor says we're probably not gonna get a kidney in time, so then he goes to the underworld market and they take his money and then steal one of his kidneys and don't give him a kidney in return for his sister, and they just steal his money. He's all fucked up, and then he gets a call from the doctor and says, actually, we did found one. You have the money, right? This is a great moment. And he's like, oh, I don't have the money anymore. And it's all fucked up, so now he has to find the money somehow. He's going to kidnap his boss's kid, who just fired him, and he's got a girlfriend, and this girlfriend might be my favorite character in all of these movies, especially when she's sort of validated in the end. She's like a crazy, like, communist, no, not just communist. What is the other word the communist types like to use? Anarchist. We love that word. She has like a saying she repeats, and she like hands out pamphlets in her not pastime, in her downtime, in her spare time is I think what I was looking for, the phrase there, where she's like, stop relying on American products, kill the something. It's not death to America, but it's along those lines. It's like there's like three things she says, and she says them in order. It's just a funny little reiterative quirk. And then also throughout the movie, because they end up kidnapping the little girl, and she's so cute, and they love her, and it's like they get along with her, and the sister who doesn't even know about the plot, but they're living at that house because his sister and his brother live together. There's so many great shots. They're all coming back to me now. Like when the sister's in pain and she's trying to get the brother's attention, but he's deaf, so he can't hear it, and she's like screaming. And his apartment is like a lot of jerking off in these movies, by the way. Like we got the brothers next door. They seem like four brothers, like young kids. Well, not young kids, like 12, 14, 16, and 17. And they're all like jerking off together in the same room, leaning against the wall, trying to hear into what they think is a couple fucking next door. But it's actually the sister like riling in pain. And it's like, aha, it sounds like fucking. What does that say about our society, as I wag my finger? And it's just like it's like, man, humanity sucks. Jerking off to somebody riling in pain while the brother can't hear it, and he's happily like eating noodles in the foreground while she's shrieking in the background. A lot of great shots like that. Just the way the little girl in Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance is much better than the Australian girl they got for Lady Vengeance, whose lines. First of all, hold on, let's talk about the girl in. We can talk about the daughters in all of them. Oldboy's got a daughter too, didn't you know? But that one's funny because they're fucking. The daughter in Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. She's like 7 or 8. She's super cute. The way she interacts with her kidnappers, who she doesn't realize have kidnapped her, is really cute. Like the way she just like sits on top of the deaf boy. And she like is smacking him around, and I'm thinking about the scene where he gives her the suicide note, where she gives him the suicide note for his sister, because his sister eventually finds out about the kidnapping scheme and is guilty that she's a part of it, so she kills herself in the bath, and then he has a freak out moment of like, what was this all for? Now I've got this dumb fucking kid, how do I give the kid back? The kid ends up drowning in a river while he's not paying attention because he can't hear. It's crazy. and it all spirals out of control. A lot of this in the first two movies, it is like you're just waiting for things sort of to go bad for all the characters involved, and you sort of are waiting for that in Lady Vengeance 2, and then it never comes, and that's sort of a neat subversion of the little narrative arc the trilogy goes on a little bit. And Oldboy, things go really bad, and he probably didn't even deserve it. In Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, you feel like, oh, he's probably going to get killed, and he's probably going to deserve it, I guess, in the narrative sense. It is funny. This is a general concept. We're talking about the daughters. Then we're going to get to general concepts about vengeance. I'm writing it in the chat here because that's what I have up on OBS as I record this. Vengeance. I'm sure that'll jog my memory. The little girl. So, little girl in fucking Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance is super cute. She's the best. Then we got the daughter and Oldboy. We're not actually going to talk about that right now because she's a woman and an actual actress. Then in Lady Vengeance, we have the Australian girl who is good some of the time, but there's sort of two problems with her. Some of the time, it's very clear that the directing staff doesn't know how English sentences really flow. So sometimes, especially as an English speaker, and her lines, it is such a fundamental, like, different viewing experience to being Korean or English speaking. And this is very interesting because we like to think about this a lot when we're watching. If you like subbed anime, you like sort of pride yourself on we're getting as close to the original experience as possible. But that's absolutely not true. It being subtitled fundamentally changes the experience because, first of all, you're looking at the bottom of the screen a lot, you're not absorbing information, and sometimes there'll be two conversations going on at once and you can't read them all at one time. And hopefully you're watching it alone so you can pause it and read them both. But then also, you're not actually supposed to understand both the conversations it's going. One conversation is sort of background stuff that you could be paying attention to on like a rewatch or something, and the other one is in the foreground that you're actually supposed to be paying attention to. There's a lot of fundamental things that happen with audio that can't just be replaced, and audio design and sort of how the planned experience is with a piece. They can't just be replaced by having subtitles. So in some sense, the dub might actually be closer to the original experience because you intuitively understand certain things that you would intuitively understand as a native Japanese speaker. But then you got whole different actors doing the voices, and especially in anime, dubs fucking suck, and you don't want to be beaten over the head with fucking terrible, overly emotive voice acting. And maybe that's the case with the original Japanese voice acting too, but you can't tell because it's in fucking Japanese, and you can't tell what's cringe or not in Japanese. But you can in English, and that shit's cringe, so you're going to stay away from that, etc., etc. So a fundamental difference in your viewing experience of Lady Vengeance is like, for me, the girl is sort of the most familiar aspect or familiar feeling aspect of the movie. When the intent for a Korean audience is for her to be the exact opposite. Like, she's a Korean girl, she doesn't even speak Korean, and she speaks a little bit of Korean at some points in the movie, especially as she's reading the letter. Korean actually sounds pretty good, but again, that's from a complete outsider. And she's not really supposed to know Korean in the movie, but I think that's just because she's reading it and imagining her voice saying it, etc., etc. But yeah, and there's certain scenes where, like, especially there's a translation scene at the end where you're supposed to hear the main girl who's speaking Korean first, and then and then it's translated to the Korean girl, and then she'll say her daughter who speaks English, and then she says something, and then it's translated back. But you're sort of preempted with what you're supposed to be held over in sort of mystery of like what she's saying and waiting for the translation. But because I intuitively understand English, because I'm an English speaker, I hear that first, and then it's sort of a delayed reaction to see her reaction to what she just said. It makes sense if you watch it. It's a bit confusing in the way I'm iterating on it here. Iterating isn't the right word there. Orating on it? I don't know how I'm saying it. How I'm explaining it. You understand, chat. But yeah, it's just an interesting, fundamentally different experience. But the point is, and I remember this being the case with Devilman Crybaby as it was coming out, where there's like an English segment in that where Ryu starts speaking English, and it's the Japanese voice actor speaking English, and he speaks really broken, bad English, and that's not how it's supposed to, like, clearly they didn't know that it sounded bad. And sometimes you feel that, like, well, they didn't know how to direct her to do her lines good in English. So sometimes it's like she's sort of speaking broken English, even though she shouldn't be. Though again, the girl has the accent, so it seems like, and because she's young, it just seems like she was repeating the lines as she was fed them, so it doesn't seem very natural. Watch the movie and you'll understand, alright? The line delivery is not always good with her. Another point is the character sort of acts younger than she is, and I think this might just be a byproduct of the plot, where she has to be like 14 for the plot to work, because Lady Vengeance has to have had her before she went to prison, and she went to prison for 13 years for the kidnapping murder. That was interesting, where you would only get like 5 years for armed robbery and like 13 years for murder. And I don't know if Korean sentences are relaxed, or it's just because she was well behaved in prison or something. Also, their prisons seemed kind of nice, at least the ladies' prison, and sort of environment is what I'm saying. They had like a cooking class and everything. I think they might have that in normal prisons too. I don't know. I've never actually been to prison, chat. I know I seem like a hard-edged young man who grew up in the poor neighborhoods, but I have not been to prison. But yes, for the plot to work, she has to be like 14. But the way she acts and the way she especially speaks in those British parts, in the English parts, I think it would make a lot more sense if she was like 8 years old and as young as the girl in Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. That's where I was going with all this. It's coming full circle. Like she's like 14. She should be like more prickly, and I don't know. She's not really acting like a 14-year-old. That's the case throughout the movie, but it's okay and it sort of works, and you can sort of just wrap it into the overall wackiness of the movies. I got a notification on my phone and it distracted me for a second, and that's why I fucked up that sentence. Chat, quit making fun of me. Now, I wrote Vengeance in chat. Now, what the fuck did I write that for? That's the name of 2 of these fucking movies. The overall theme of vengeance in the movie or something? Oh, vengeance is a concept. I've seen a YouTube video essay thumbnail go around recently. I haven't watched the video yet. I can't remember who it was from. I think it was about anime, because I think Guts was in the middle. And it was like, the title was like, I'm not angry enough for vengeance narratives. And I'm like, oh my god, that's so something I would have said when I was 17. That's so cool. And obviously stupid. But vengeance is an interesting thing to be the central focus of so much of our media. Because when, in the normal human experience that movies reflect and that Park Chan-wook here is trying to reflect and say something about, when do you ever get vengeance? Like, you'd think, like, at the end of the point of Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance is everybody that seeks vengeance, their life ends horribly. And we sort of shift, like, our loyalties in the narrative. Like, at first, you're with the deaf kid, and he got fired, and he needs to go. And then we sort of learn about his boss, and how his boss is actually kind of an alright guy. And obviously, they fucked up and accidentally killed his daughter, so you're like, yeah, that's what you get for accidentally not paying attention and letting her drown. I'm gonna kill you right now. And you still feel sympathy for the girlfriend and the deaf kid. And you sort of follow them a little bit, but most of the second half of the movie is focused on the boss. And then when he gets him, you're kind of like, oh, that's just pretty good, I guess. Whatever, vengeance and stuff. But you're kind of like, oh, don't kill each other, just become friends. They sort of tease that they might do that, but then they're the only ones that understand each other. But then, in the end, the bad guy, the boss, is like, you understand why I have to do it right, and then he cuts his fucking Achilles tendons while they're in the water and stuff, and there's blood everywhere, and it's a big cut, and they're screaming and stuff, and it's like, whoa, vengeance and stuff, bro, crazy. But then he gets killed at the end too. There's like such a great... Alright, so before we get to that, we got to do the tangent about the great ending to this movie, where a bunch of people show up to kill him after he's killed the protagonist. Spoiler alert. And the protagonist's girlfriend, etc. Oh, the scene in the elevator was so good. God, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, obviously the best of these 3 movies. Where he sees where the thing comes off and he realizes it's the police are taking out his dead girlfriend. And I thought they were going to do a big dramatic, like, crazy face on him as he noticed, but he just sort of stayed calm and processed it and closed his eyes and was very sad. And I was like, oh, this is the greatest movie of all time. Fucking Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. What a television show. It was great. Oh, but throughout the movie, there's sort of the girlfriend character is the most interesting one because she's a big anarchist, and I think we're introduced to her as she's typing away on some online forum, and she's written up a big decree, and at the end it was the language is too soft, and she was like, we're gonna change it to kill those pigs or whatever. She hates the rich and stuff. She's a commie, chat. Catch up. So she hates him and she's gonna kill him, and it's why she talks him into like fucking over his boss and everything, even though the deaf kid is sort of like a diligent worker in some sort of factory. Oh, the factory work. That seems so exhausting. Relatable hashtag. What a cool little opening slow scene of him working in the factory. Best movie of the three, you know. We've said that about 3 times now. So she's crazy, basically, but she's kind of cool. She's, with our deaf protagonist, you'd be thinking, oh, our poor deaf protagonist, he's never going to have a girlfriend, just like me, chat. How relatable. And then he's got the cutest girlfriend of all time. And they have a cute little relationship where she beats him up. That was cute. Where after she finds out he fucked up and the fakes underground, well, I guess they're real surgeons, but the underground surgeon stole his kidney and stole his money. She like kicks him and stuff, and he's like bleeding out of his fucking wound of where they just taped up his fucking kidney, and she doesn't give a fuck. She's just kicking him and stuff. I love abuse. It's cute, especially when women do it. Really, only when women do it. They're little women. They can't hurt us, you know. This is all half sarcastic, all right? That's coming across, right? The half part is still probably problematic, right? Put this in the anti-Kyle Entertainment YouTube video essay when we get into a lot of drama at some point. It's going to happen, chat. But all this is endearing. They have a cute little relationship. They're talking about kidnapping, and it's cute, and the good kidnapping and bad kidnapping, and she's kind of crazy with her ideas, but she's so lovable and stuff. And then there's like a shift where she seems like incompetent. Oh, I think at some point I was going to bring this up, but I didn't bring this up. They're also, with these themes, they're always singing with the little girl a sort of very pro-South Korean nationalist song, it seems like. And it's funny because it's sort of antithetical to everything the girl believes, but she's still singing like this little, like, it's clearly like a song you sing to children about how great South Korea is or something. But then we got more information about her, and like I think this is all after she's dead. Like the 2 detectives are like talking about her, another Tarantino-esque thing. I'm sure that's in a million other movies, and it's some reference to an older movie. Everything is Devilman. We've gone over this before. And they're talking about her, and they're like, oh yeah, one time she tried to flee to North Korea but she got caught. And the reason, how she knows our protagonist is that she faked being deaf as a kid so she could go to deaf school. And like she used to sit next to him in the 2nd grade before she got kicked out. It's all these weird, eccentric like facts of like, oh, she's actually like a big loser. Like, you know, all these online lefties chat, you know, big fucking losers, all talk, no bite. No real friends. And then they're like, oh, she was a big member of this anarchist cult that she was writing the big thing out at the beginning where she changed the language. And they're like, but she was the only member of this cult. And it's like a punchline of like, she's a big loner crazy person, and she found like the one dude that like made her happy, and it was our deaf kid, and they were so great together, and now they're dead, and it's no good. And you're feeling all sad. And then it's like, so there's like a reframing. She sort of seems competent. And then she's sort of reframed to be completely incompetent, especially when she like gets caught and then killed and tortured by the bad guy with the like electric stuff and stuff like that. That was a crazy scene. And then at the end, she's sort of validated because it turns out she threatens the boss dude when he eventually captures her and is torturing her, and she's like, you have to let me go. I gave you a picture to my associates. Like, if something happens to me, they're gonna kill you. And in that moment, you're like, it's like every like interrogation scene you've ever seen in a movie. She's obviously bluffing, and what we've sort of learnt about her at this point is, as their plan is completely falling apart, she's kind of incompetent. So you're like, man, nobody's falling for this threat. But then that's what happens at the end of the movie. She actually does have associates who are clearly capable of murder and stuff. Oh, they say they call her group a terrorist group, but she's like the only member, Lamau. And then they come and get him in the last scene of the movie and stab him and kill him, the boss dude, after he's killed both of them. And he's like disposing of the deaf kid's body, because that's the big final confrontation. The girlfriend dies like 3/4 of the way through the movie, and this is... Well, don't mind me. We just ran out of recording space. Luckily, I fucking caught it as soon as it happens. Otherwise, if I had been tabbed over and that had happened and it just stopped recording, I would have fucking killed somebody because I would have missed. I would have got my vengeance, is all I'm going to say, because the recording would have been lost. But I think it literally just cut off the last word I was saying, which I actually don't remember what it was. We were talking about the competency of the girlfriend and her being validated at the end when her terrorist buddies show up and kill the fucking boss. And like, oh my god. Now, I didn't really like how this was done in the movie because, like, at first, I'm like, who the fuck are these guys? And I thought it was just, like, him getting caught in the act of, like, cleaning up the body, and it's like, aha, his comeuppance, because obviously you're not going to get revenge and be happy in one of these movies. Though Lady Vengeance kind of did that. Like, that's never going to be the way a vengeance narrative happens. So I was like, oh, here we go. He's going to get caught by, like, some civilians, and he's going to go to jail, and it's going to be like, oh, there's no happy ending for vengeance. Vengeance is bad. It's going to be that message again, which I remember is what we're talking about here. We're going to talk about the grand theme of vengeance. And yeah, and so what the fuck was I saying? He gets they kill him, and then it makes her seem competent. But what, there was a big... Oh, I don't like how it was done, because initially they show it with, like, a piece of paper or, like, a photo that they're looking at that we don't see. And so if you're paying attention, you can figure out, like... And it's, like, a great moment where you're like, oh, my God. It's like she was telling the truth. That's fucking crazy, bro. And it's, like, a great little moment. But then they played her voiceover of her saying it again. And I'm like, I got it the first time. Now this is a little lame. You know, show don't tell, as we love. And I was like, oh, we're iterating... I'm loving the word iterating tonight, especially when it doesn't make sense. But I guess it kind of makes sense here, but iterating on it again and reiterating on it, I think is the word I was actually looking for. And having her voice line come over again was kind of like, oh, yeah, I got it. So I was like, treat me like I'm smarter than this movie, you fucking idiot. But nonetheless, what a great twist to the end. Now, we've done gushing about the best movie of these. Vengeance overall, that YouTube video I was talking about, that I haven't watched, that I've only seen the thumbnail of, which is like, I'm not angry enough for vengeance narratives, where I assume the point is going to be that, like, it's weird about revenge. It's hard to get on board with people who want revenge, because usually you're not angry enough. And this is sort of the point I was thinking about while watching these movies, and just sort of thinking about why vengeance is such a prevalent theme in, like, all artistic works, when, like, nothing like this will ever happen to you in your real life. Like, when would you, like, when you get angry, you sort of do want revenge, and you sort of do fantasize about it. Somebody pisses you off at work, says the same thing, or as you're around a little bit, and you're like, man, one day I'm going to fucking stab this prick. But that dissipates in, like, 3 minutes. Or, like, the next time you see them, they're, like, kind of nice, and you're like, oh, you're forgiving them, and your mood changes, and et cetera, et cetera. But, like, nobody's ever going to kill your kid, and you're going to get revenge on them. I guess it's like a... These are obviously interesting things to explore, like the what if. It's sort of like a hypothetical. But like so much, there's so many revenge films. I guess it makes sense if you're a woman and you want revenge on men, because women get raped and stuff. And obviously men get raped sometimes too, but not as commonly, I'm almost certain. So it's like or domestic violence and getting revenge on men in that sense, because it is like something that happens in everyday life. But like, is the average man ever even going to like get in a physical fight in their life? Like, maybe, but like, it's not like somebody's going to die because of this fight and you're going to want revenge or something. Let alone your kid get kidnapped and like, what if I can get this fucking kidnapper back and fucking kill him, bro? That'd be sick. Now, obviously, if you put your thinking cap on, you think a little deeper about this. It's going to be like, because we throw Vinland Saga into this, because that's the tentpole piece on revenge and vengeance. Whenever I think about vengeance, I think about it through the lens of Vinland Saga, at least, right? It had what a profound effect Vinland Saga has had on this humble young man's existence. I shouldn't go off on funny tangents like that, because I completely forgot what I was talking about. If you put your thinking cap on is what I was saying. But what conclusion do you come to if you put your thinking cap on? You would say it's just about managing little bits of vengeance you could have. Like, obviously, all stories are heightened for dramatic purpose and involve supernatural events, or not even supernatural events, but heightened natural events that could happen to you in your everyday life, but to a much more extreme extent. And if they can handle it in this situation, then if Guts can handle all the misery he goes through in life and come through at the end and love companionship and his girlfriend, etc., and push through and realize life is still worth living, you and your much lesser struggles can too. That sort of thing, where it's a heightened, like, complication that's theme can still resonate with you. It is fascinating that so much of it is about vengeance, though. But it seems very foreign to me. And it seems like that video essay, the idea of it would be like, I'm not angry enough to relate to Guts' lust for vengeance. Guts would be a poor example because I very much do feel that lust for vengeance. But there is a trend where a lot of characters just want revenge, and that's the easiest way to write a character. If somebody wronged them, they want to go on a journey for revenge, and through the journey they'll learn something more important. Which is not really the case with Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, or Oldboy, really. And even in, like, Oldboy or Lady Vengeance, where these people kind of did a kind of bad thing or were kind of bad people, like, Oldboy over here really didn't even do anything bad. It was just sort of a misunderstanding accident. And through most people's eyes, he probably didn't do anything wrong because outing the incest wouldn't have been wrong at all. But he's kind of a prick at the beginning of the movie. It's like, oh, shit, does he really deserve all of this just for being a drunken prick sometimes? No, probably not. In Sympathy, even Mr. Vengeance, it's sort of like, oh, people are doing really shitty things to each other, so you kind of get it. And then in Lady Vengeance, she kind of did something bad and is kind of repenting from it. Lady Vengeance definitely feels more about redemption than vengeance, I guess. But it's interesting. Vengeance trilogy. Why? Why do you got to do our vengeance trilogy? What's this? What deeper core thing has happened to you in life for you to want to make something like this? Now, I think a lot of the reaction to this, and it is with most abstract stuff, and I wonder what the general, because I actually did watch the normies react to Oldboy, and you're just waiting for somebody, and the normies are the prime people to say it, to be like, man, how does somebody think about this fucked up stuff or something? That's always the lamest thing you've ever heard, like the most uninspired person ever say. It's like it's all stylized stuff and it's cool. Now, why was I bringing that up? Just to shit on that theoretical person that does exist and who you've all encountered before? Stylization? No, that was the point I came to in the middle of that. Vengeance. Oh, I was going to liken my feelings about vengeance to that person who would say that about something. But anyway, let's just pretend I did that in a very eloquent manner that just blew your mind and gave you a million things to think about. I guess I didn't give a spoiler warning at the beginning of this shit. I'm spoiling all these movies. I'm not going to talk about them individually and be like, well, if you've just seen Oldboy, skip to this part where we just talk about Oldboy. But I guess we kind of just talked about Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. The girlfriend character is the best character. She fucking rocked, bro. And then she was validated at the end. It was fucking sick. Oldboy, he's fucking his daughter. And at some point in the movie, I didn't figure it out, but I had the thought, like, I think it's when they're investigating the daughter, and I'm like, there's clearly something being brought up with this girl being so young, and it's so weird that he nearly raped her and she's still keeping him around. Now, at first I thought, is this just men not understanding women again, especially in 2000s where they might think this is just a funny old man activity to try and rape her on the toilet. It seems like the movie was kind of self-aware about that at the end because of all the hypnotism stuff. There was a point where I thought, is she his daughter? Because of the age difference. And I was like, oh, I think it's just like a parallel of like, why is he with such a younger woman? Why is this younger woman into him at all? It's so weird. It also helps that I thought she was like a very minor character at the very beginning when she was introduced, and I was like, oh, she's just going to be the first scene. And then she was very much giving it up to him. And I guess I meant sexually, but I didn't. But like, she's very into him, and you could tell there are certain situations, I've only ever observed this, right? There was one time I was out in public with one of my friends, and he was talking to the bar, like he just asked the bartender for a drink or something. And I don't know, there was something in the way she said, and she continued the conversation going where it's like, oh my God, she's so into him. Why? Why is this happening right now? Like, they've shared 2 fucking words, and like, I don't know, it's just it reminded me of that situation so much where it's just like an immediate attraction. It's weird, and it's like, what's happening here? Why is she so into him? Why isn't it me? But yeah. And it was obviously more odd in the, I think the bartender in real life just thought he was cute. That was weird. Anyway, maybe she was drunk. Um, but in the movie, it's weirder, and it's clearly something at one point I was like, is this another 1001 Night situation to connect this back to an old movie night where it's just like, oh, this is like made in the 60s, so the female character gets no fleshing out, and it's just like Lamau, she's in love with man, and that's all her character. And I was like, oh, is that what we're doing here? And especially after the rape thing, I thought, oh no, this is what we're doing here, isn't it? Now it turns out not to really be. Like, they have an out with the hypnotism thing, which I buy like 90%. That like, this was all intentional and to fuck with you, to make you not see the thing. But everything about their relationship is bad. Like the sex stuff of like, it hurts so much, but I'm enduring it for you, and it's just like missionary. And it's like, what is happening here? Why is this happening? Does Odeshi, did I get the name right, have a giant cock or something? What's going on here? So it was all weird. And at some point I did have the thought of like, oh, are we paralleling the daughter here with the age difference? And I think it's in the early scene where they like figure out that she's been adopted somewhere or something, and she's in Sweden, I think they say. Another thing with a reoccurring thing is your kid getting the white people raising him. I guess it's not really colored as a bad thing. It's not like a racist thing that I was trying to comedically point out there, but it is just a funny little through line of like, man, she's in a different culture, living in a different world. What's that fucking song called? It's the they're the ones that sing "He Hit Me and It Felt Like a Kiss." That band, and that other one, la la na 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 na. You know that one? I know that one. Everybody just went, I know that song now. That only vaguely tied in. And that's about, like, people in different parts of a city, I'm pretty sure. At least I think it's New York City, because it was in Mad Men. Well, the He Hit Me and It Felt Like a Kiss song was in Mad Men. I wonder what episode that's after. Anyway, we were up Mad Men somehow, chat. You didn't think I could, but I did. The daughter stuff. Oh, and then when it was like when he opened the box up and it was a family album, I realized immediately. I'm like, oh my god, they're actually doing it. And I thought it was so cool. I guess it's supposed to be a moment of existential dread of like, I accidentally fucked my daughter. But like, fucking your daughter is bad if you raise your daughter. If you don't, well, I guess she was like 3. So we raised her a little bit. But unknowingly fucking your daughter, I don't even know if that's a moral indiscretion. Like, incest isn't bad because of... We're not having kids here. Incest isn't bad because it's of the blood relation. It's bad because of the grooming relationship. I guess this is just too, like, incest-pilled. And I think inherently you're just supposed to go, yuck, and think about your parental relationship and be like, that's gross. And isn't the brother and sister literally twins too? Isn't that like the win-win? The only way incest cannot be bad is if they're like twins and there's no power dynamic. Though, is there an inherent power dynamic between men and women in a patriarchal society in which we live in? And is all sex rape? Is all incestual sex rape? I think the first one's true. At least if you're strictly talking about power dynamics being bad. But we're not ready for that conversation yet. So yeah, both incestual situations were fine. I don't know what everybody's freaking out about. I'm kind of joking, but that kind of did affect my perception of the movie, where it's like, the twist is great, and I did like that I figured it out slightly before the movie did. And I like the reaction from the characters, and it's not like, oh, why is he freaking out? It's a big fucked up thing. And it's a great plot twist, because the way the movie is built up, because when you first thing and it releases him and they're on the phone together and he's like, I kind of miss you, and like, I'm an expert on Odishi and I know everything about him and everything like that. I was going to repeat the name, but I was fucking up the name, and if I fucked it up like 3 times in a row to repeat the rhythm of how the lines were delivered in the movie, just sort of replicated, I think it would have sounded more racist than me just fucking up the name once. Odishi, and it means something else in Korean. That's another cultural thing that I was missing out on by being an idiot white person and not a Korean. So I guess it had nothing to do with being white, but just being foreign. What were we talking about? Incest being good. Nothing happened. That was wrong. Oh, them on the phone earlier, and it's like, oh, maybe like he actually is like a weird like super fan of this one dude somehow, and that's their relationship. And then he kind of seems likable the whole time. It might just be because he's cute, huh? The bad guy is who I'm talking about here now, an Oldboy. And so when he releases him, it's like, oh, did he like want him to train up because he has some super purpose or something to help beat the ancient bad guy that's going to show up? Now, obviously, this is not really the tone of the movie or anything, but it's like, is there some sort of like noble plan where he will forgive him in the end and understand his 15-year imprisonment? Now, obviously, the framing of him for killing his wife would seem to contradict this, but when you're watching a movie, you ain't thinking about things logically here. So it was sort of prompted to like the bad guy and think this was all going to have sort of not a happy ending, but like the reason was going to be happy, but he was going to kill him anyway, or something. Happy is, you know what I mean, as in a good reason or something. And maybe we would hate Oldboy at the end for killing old mate. It's a great twist on that, because he says at some point, like, you shouldn't be asking why I imprisoned you. You should be asking why I let you out. And it's like, and you're sort of thinking the whole time, it just doesn't make sense. And the same thing is with Lady Vengeance at the beginning, where these two sort of have a mystery thing that Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance really doesn't have. It's all sort of more linear and direct. Where you're thinking the whole time, like, why would he let him out? This makes no sense. Just like, this is obviously like just so we can have a movie, right? Is why he was let him out, and he's gonna get killed by him in the end, and it's gonna be hubris. That's not how this fucking works out in the end. So it's such a great twist to build on all that. And he's like, why would I let you out? How can the torture get any worse? Tricking you into fucking your daughter. That's a great little thing. And also it then connects them through incest and maybe makes them understand each other more in some sick poetry reason. And then our cute bad guy who wins in the end gets to shoot himself, and that sequence is obviously really good, where he's flashing back to holding his sister who's trying to commit suicide. I'm assuming phantom pregnancies are an actual thing that can happen somehow. We're getting a battery warning, but they just start talking about that at the end of the movie, and that was kind of funny and wacky. But yeah, and like that's why she kills herself, is why I was bringing that up. And him holding her, and then the dropping her, and the match shots and stuff, and connect. Now, you know me, I love that Obito versus Kakashi Naruto fight. Now, Oldboy is no Naruto, right? It's not as cool as the Obito and Kakashi fight with the match shotting and cutting back and forth, but obviously the main character running through the whole high school sequence is fucking sick, and the charisma he has as like a 17-year-old was great. Which the movie should have been all about that. But yeah, all that stuff is super cool when they're running around like the high school, and it's the different timelines, and then we obviously start doing the same thing with the bad guy and holding, and then in the elevator and the imagining, and then he drops her and his hand sort of makes a gun, and then it clocks, and then you cut back and the boom, and he shot himself and everything. It's all really cool. Just quickly, the fight scene in The Thing was kind of cool. It wasn't as cool as everybody was saying, bro. Now, I don't know how you actually make an action scene cool, because they all suck and are lame. That's something a 17-year-old would say. It was kind of funny. It was funny how they slowly like backed away, and the narrative arc of like them outnumbering and clobbering on him, and then them all increasingly becoming scared was so like by the numbers, I guess. And I guess it might just be because Captain America has done this joke where it was like, or some superhero movies, and they probably all got it from Oldboy, but it's just a happenstance that I've seen them before Oldboy, so it feels like a redundant joke. But when like they open the elevator, now this actually isn't the joke. He beats up all the dudes in the hallway, and then the elevator opens and there's more of them, and it's supposed to be like in a funny Western movie, you would go, "Oh boy, more of them," or something, or you'd just say "oh boy," and the implication would be, oh, it's more of them, and he's gonna get beaten up, because you think he just got through beating up all these people in the hallway, and he's just narrowly escaped. But then instead we do the Captain America thing where the fucking elevator door opens and they all fall over, and you just beat up everybody in the elevator too. So it wasn't actually the joke, but it was kind of like the joke, and I didn't think it was that cool. So that's all we got to say about that. All this stuff with the dudes that actually held him prisoner was funny too. Them kidnapping the girl, and then coming to an understanding, and the teeth thing, and this dude's a good dentist before he starts doing it, etc., etc. All that was cool. what else? I feel like there was one other like big point I wanted to make about Oldboy. Match cutting stuff was cool at the end. I like that a lot. The weird apartment he has that feels so 2000s, and like it kind of feels like those Batman 2000s, like mid 2000s movie where there's this sort of attempt at bit like a sort of modern or futuristic like apartment design. I don't know, his apartment reminded me of Batman's apartment in those Batman movies, and I was like, man, the 2000s, the mid 2000s was so fucking lame. Look at these dorks. Dumb fucking pool feature that's kind of sick in their fucking thing, and the moving closets and stuff, and just the shower in the middle of nowhere. Like, they definitely thought this was the fucking peak of modernity back in 2003. And that's lame, in retrospect, and not what we turned into. He's got a bucket hat on and stuff too, but that was cool. Oldboy was good. 4 out of 5. I guess the reason why none of these movies are 5s out of 5 is just because you didn't feel it, bro. You just didn't feel like, man, I'm watching the best movie I ever saw right now. They're all really good, and they all give you a lot to think about, and there are some great shots in cinematography, etc., use of color, use of camera work, etc. All of it was fucking sick, but just not so sick. Now, Lady Vengeance might be a 4.5. We'll have to decide. Was Oldboy my least favorite one? Am I going to get accused of just being edgy and saying that? I don't know. They were all relatively similarly good. Lady Vengeance, just to try and talk about it a little bit more. We already talked about it a little bit at the beginning. Because we're running out of battery time. I'm doing pretty good for somebody that made no fucking notes on this shit. I want to say, and this is actually not the case with Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, although there's that really cool song at the end that I really like. The music is very, very good in all three of these movies, and I sort of get into this when I'm talking to Ari and even Bacon and Mia in the Vinland Saga conversations, where I'm always like, especially if I'm reading subtitles, like, I never notice music. But these movies were different. I was actually going to say that it was just the second two, but now I'm remembering that one theme, I think it's at the very end of Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, is like that creepy chanting song. That song was fucking sick. And then Oldboy has like 2 or 3 really famous themes that I had probably heard before, but they were all fucking sick. And then the main Lady Vengeance theme, I thought it was the Oldboy track initially, and I was like, oh, is these connected? I guess they might sound similar. I don't know anything about music to say if it's melodically or instrumentally or something like that. But the credit song for Lady Vengeance is fucking sick, bro. The opening bit of Lady Vengeance is so cool with all the whites and stuff. And I will say for Lady Vengeance, I didn't watch the black and white version where it slowly turns to black and white. I briefly skimmed through it afterwards, but I don't know. I like the color at the end, I guess. The subversion that really, like, because at first you're like, why are we showing the parents their kids' murder tapes? And then you're like, oh, it's to make them angry so they'll want vengeance immediately in case the grief and the lust for vengeance has dissipated over the last 10 years or something since their kids had been kidnapped and killed. And the last 30 minutes of the movie being like dealing and dwelling on the vengeance, and then them having like the nobody's birthday, happy birthday celebration, and they all eat cake together and take the photo together as like evidence, and the detective is there the whole time, etc., etc. All that stuff was dwelling, and that was very interesting and cool. All the inmate flashbacks were cool, I guess. Some of the shots or like the text when you initially go to the flashbacks or introducing her old friends from prison was really good. I also like her sort of like, it's not schizo, but half and half, because she's completely in control of it. Personality, where she switches from like being the really dotty nice girl to sort of a more vicious person, especially. You see it immediately in the movie in those very early scenes that I was talking about with the preacher dude, where he's like, where she says, go fuck yourself after she gets out, and she doesn't eat the fucking tofu to show herself as pure as and sin-free or whatever. And another good joke later is when she's like, I converted to Buddhism, and he freaks the fuck out because he's not actually a good person. He's just like a religious, not zealot, because that's such an overused word, but he's like a tribalistic, even that has a negative connotation. I'm trying to say he's on his sports team and she converted to the other sports team and he's mad. It seemed sillier like that, though he did have some plot relevancy because he ends up like outing her plot to the bad guy. That wasn't very cool. His fucking weird, creepy haircut. That was funny too. He had like the mullet that everybody has now, but in 2005. I was talking about something before that. Dwelling in the vengeance, etc., etc., I guess. The ending is interesting because the daughter says farewell and then says her name, and she's been saying her name throughout the film rather than mother, so I wasn't sure if the ending was indicative of the daughter is actually going to leave, because the Australian parents do show up again, which was nice. Now, the shot of her, like, holding the knife to her throat and them freaking out, like, and the like, not the narrative beats, but the literal, like, rhythmic beats of that scene were so good. Where the shots before it and the shots preceding it and everything like that. But yeah, what was I saying? I wasn't sure if the ending was like, oh, she's going to go back to Australia because she, like, this is not good or something like that. Or she was just saying farewell to her name and she was going to start calling her mother. Because the whole point is that she doesn't feel the burden lift after she helps the parents get revenge on the kidnapper. She still feels very guilty about her role to play in one of the deaths, and sort of indirectly and unknowingly help. Though she did knowingly kidnap him, or help kidnap him, but she just thought they were going to kidnap him, right? They thought it was a good kidnapping, but it turned out to be bad kidnapping. The point being... Oh... So yeah, I don't know if she was like, and it seems like she's getting some sort of redemption at the end because she can become a mother. Like, she buries her face in the white tofu cake thingy, to try and absolve herself of her sins. And she's also got the 20-year-old dude. That's such a scene from movies. Like, you get the cynical, like, older woman who's on a mission for revenge or something on some other dude, and she finds like I guess this happens in You season 3, and she finds like the younger dude and she fucks him, but she doesn't actually care. And she but she sort of has a sort of male-esque bed talk post-sex. That it's funny how often that scene happens, and how often, like, the slightly older, not cynical, but like gone through some shit woman is always like put in that position. It's interesting that it seems to be a tendency to write them in a position with a younger, like, boyish guy. I assume that's a male writing female thing, though I'd have to think about it more. But just an interesting sort of, like, trope. Other things to think about in Lady Vengeance. There's funny little bits of CGI throughout I think it's only through Oldboy and Lady Vengeance, where there's obviously the ant sequence. And then there's like a giant ant on a plane on a train rather for a shot in Oldboy, which looked kind of bad, but again, the wackiness and the goofiness of especially the last two movies, it sort of fits. And like the the bad CGI of the dude's head on like a dog that she shoots at the beginning of Lady Vengeance was also cute. And then she says farewell. That was one of the moments where Korean was sounding really good, where she says farewell, and then she shoots him, and that was good. And she shoots the dog later. That was pretty cool. Pretty crazy, bro. Pretty fucked up. Pretty cool, though. Oh, and also there is interesting things with the younger dude that she sleeps with in Lady Vengeance, because he does stick around for more than that, and he's sort of even confused by the situation because he's trying to introduce him. Well, he's writing on the class on the chalkboard of the old abandoned. Big noise behind me. I got distracted for a second. The old abandoned school that a lot of the movie, at least the back end of the movie, takes place in. And he's writing like Opa, which means brother. All right, I learned some things. And then father sounds like very similar. And he's trying to figure out whether he's going to be like the older brother or the father to this kid, because she's very similar. Like, she's only like 6 years younger than him or something. It was an interesting, just like confusing situation. And even at the beginning where he's so obviously into her and he's like, can I call you big sis or something? And they end up fucking. More incest stuff, I guess. Incest, wincest. Oh, and that was another thing where Lady Vengeance was happy to be called sexy all the time. Like, she even brought that up when she first gets in contact with the bad guy again after she gets knocked up when she's like 18 or whatever. And then she reiterates that to the younger kid. That was just another like neat little characterizing thing. But I'm being told by the computer that we got to go home now, and I am kind of running out of things to say. I think we said some interesting things here. I think this was over an hour. If I had more direct notes and maybe if I'd waited longer, we would have been able to talk in more detail about each individual film. I don't know. Tell me how you like the new movie night formula. We don't usually get many comments on movie night, especially ones that are called to at the very end of these things that I don't think a lot of people sit through. We'll be back next time with Tar and After Sun. If you ever want to talk to me more about these movies or ask me about specific scenes or know what I think about certain things, you always show up on a stream at some point and ask me about them. I'm always willing to talk about whatever the fuck it is on stream. There we go. We film next week's movie night, a bunch of other things. Stream now. Twitch.tv/Kyle's_entertainment, I think. I don't fucking know. It's probably in the link to the fucking description blocks below. You don't have to remember these fucking URLs, you fucking idiots. 2023. But yes, I think that's it. So all these movies were roughly about equally as good, 4 to 4.5 stars. We liked them all. Missing that 5-star essence a little bit. But I'm very glad I'm indulged in Korean movies a little bit. I want to come back to them. I added 1 million of them to my watch list, etc., etc. We've broken the door down on Park Chan-wook and Korean films in general, and we are learning some things. We've 3 new experiences to think about for now and forever. How interesting. What a rewarding experience. With that being said, be back next time. Support links in the description below. Thanks.